This meeting will come to order. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the planning of the hearing examiner on September 14th, 2021. I serve in both a decision-making capacity and an advisory capacity as the mayor and city council. There are two types of public hearings that this hearing examiner conducts. The first is the legislative hearing, whereby I formulate recommendations on certain land use requests. My recommendations are forwarded onward to the city council, who makes decisions on legislative matters. The second type of public hearing is the quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that the requests are specific to a parcel of land. I'm authorized to make decisions on requests for special use permits, variances, and planned unit developments that do not involve subdivision of land. However, any decision I may make tonight is by no means final. Anyone that believes he or she has been aggrieved by my decision has a right to file an appeal to the city council. On quasi-judicial requests that involve the subdivision of land, rezones, and annexation, I'm authorized to make only recommendations to the city council, who will make the final decision. The hearing procedures are as follows. One, the staff will first present a report on the application. The applicant or applicant's representative will then present the summary of the request. 3, testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. And finally, I will allow the applicant or applicant's rebuttal to the testimony. After rebuttal testimony is given, public testimony is closed, and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed unless I see fit to reopen the hearing. The time limits for testimony are as follows. The applicant receives 10 minutes. Those are in favor, neutral, and opposed, and a rebuttal will all go for 5 minutes. I accept oral or written testimony from those in attendance, but only if you have signed a sign-up sheet available at the front of the room. When testifying for me, you must come to the podium, state your full name and address, and be prepared to be sworn in. One final note, if you're here tonight and you're angry, that's okay, but please don't take your anger out on us. We thank you for your courtesy to us and others as we move through the process. And would you please turn off your cell phone devices or computers. And with that, I'll ask staff to swear in those who intend to testify in any of the cases tonight. Go with that, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you for swearing in. The agenda tonight, first action item, approval of minutes for August 24th, will be pending further review. We have the first case is case number PUD 21-3/SUB 2111, continued from August 10th, 2021 hearing examiner meeting. It is a request by Toll Subdivisions LLC for a planned unit development, Paseo Ridge subdivision on 104 acres in an R1 low-density zone. The proposed development includes 326 residential lots with minimum lot size of 4,294 square feet and an average lot size of 8,061 square feet. the staff will fill you on the details. It's located on, parcel R32856, located approximately 915 feet north of the intersection of 10th Avenue and Orchard Avenue, on the intersection adjacent to Ballard Park, Caldwell, Idaho. And I have a little bit of housekeeping. We received a letter. This is dated August 2nd, 2021, from Leslie Beauchamp, 15244 Bald Eagle Avenue in Caldwell. And this is not in the packet, accompanying packet, staff report here. But I characterize this as being very, very concerned about the high density and the density figures, the way they're arrived at for this proposal. We go into detail on the mathematics involved with calculating the density, and it states categorically that the number of homes being allowed, being proposed, may be allowed, is far too many. It advocates for a larger lot size for that development. So this call this exhibit number 914-1. And with that, I'll have staff make the presentation on this item, and please identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. Tonight we are here to consider an application from Toll Brothers Southwest LLC for planned unit development, Passero Ridge subdivision. This development is proposed as a planned unit development to provide for deviations from the standards in the R1 zone, and the development is proposed to be on 104 acres of previously zoned R1 city jurisdictional property, and they are proposing 326 residential, single-family residential units, and with an overall gross density of 3.13 units per acre. In the planned unit development for low-density residential, in the city ordinances, the development can increase from 3 units per gross acre up to 6 units per gross acre, and they have not done that. They have not asked to maximize that density. They are just slightly over at 3.13 units per acre. Okay, so the Passero Ridge proposed site is located adjacent to and surrounding Ballard Park, a city park. The developer has worked with the city staff, including engineering, planning, and zoning, to provide for connectivity to that park, which provides citizens of the city of Caldwell access into the park without going around, traveling by car, or out onto the public streets to make access to that park. The property to the west of the Passero Ridge site and to Ballard Park are developments that were developed in the county with no municipal services provided to them. Therefore, they are on larger residential estate type lots because they do have to provide for sewer or septic and well on those sites. The Passero Ridge site will be constructed to be connected to municipal services. They do have a variety of lot sizes, many lot sizes, much greater than 8,000, even though that's their average lot size, which is consistent with the R1 low density residential dimensional standards. And they transition from small residential lot sizes along the northern boundary to much larger lots on the exterior, and as they transition to the south to Orchard Street. There is a couple of old gravel pits located to the north, one owned by Nelson Depth and the other by the Idaho Conference, Seventh Day Adventist. The property to the east of this development is currently under preliminary plat, Cirrus Point subdivision, and there are about 223 lots undeveloped but approved in that on that development as well. To the south is Lake Lowell and Deer Flat Wildlife Refuge, Bureau of Reclamation properties on this parcel. The comprehensive plan land use map has this area identified as low density residential, environmentally sensitive, and the county developments are identified as residential estates. The Passero Ridge developers have done a good job of transition lots that are near to the residential estate lots and surrounding the park as larger lot sizes, greater in size than what's required in R1 density development. The current zoning of this property is also low density residential, and the development that is proposed at a gross density of 3.13 acres is consistent with that zoning classification. Passero Ridge subdivision, this development is in compliance with the comprehensive plan based on the analysis of the code. The development as proposed is within the tolerances of density in the R1 zone for a planned unit development at 3.13 units per gross acre. They have provided for greater than 10% qualified open space, in addition to other open space that contains seepage beds and street landscape buffers and that. So they have quite a lot of open space planned into the development. They've provided for more than 4 amenities as required by the PUD within this development, including pocket parks, a clubhouse, pickleball courts, a number of other open space amenities, and pathways, connecting pathways throughout the development, wider streets, and wider landscape buffers, buffering the sidewalks from the public access streets. The developer has not provided for additional parking that is required through the PUD for lots less than 45 feet in width, and they're requesting a relief from that section of the code. The code does say shall provide for one additional unit parking space per every 4 units that is less than 45 feet in width. The development is not utilizing the PUD simply to increase the available density as shown by wider streets, varied lot sizes, gross density of 3.13 units per acre, where there is potential provided for up to 6 units per gross acre by the code. The additional thing that's in, potential question is that staff feels that the intent of the application meets 2 of the 5 criteria, including a variety of housing choices. I believe that the varied lot sizes and the 3 collections that they've provided for in housing choices of size and use meets that criteria. And I also feel that it meets number 3, whereby the development utilizes the adjacency to the city park, providing pathway connectivity, transitioning lot sizes that take advantage of both the elevation and the scenic vista of the lake. Staff is recommending approval of this application, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I do have a number of questions. Starting with the adjacent properties with the gravel pits. There's little or no discussion in the staff report about the potential hazards that might present to this development and any development around there. Have you had a discussion about the treatment on the northern boundary of this proposal to somehow mitigate or make safe that property line they share with the gravel pits?
Staff has not had those conversations, and I appreciate the hearing examiner bringing that to our attention.
It's kind of a tough question, but do you believe there are mitigation measures required for that interface between the 2 properties? Or is there anything in the code that directly addresses that situation?
Well, I believe that the comprehensive plan addresses hazards and hazardous areas, which this could be considered that. Staff did not specifically look at what that interface was along that property line, and so therefore I can't answer specifically to what types of mitigation, fencing, signage, those kind of things that could be addressed, maybe setbacks, landscape buffering, that kind of thing that could be used to mitigate some of that. But that could be addressed with the applicant, or it be taken a look at by tabling and reviewing that specifically.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Root. The staff presentation brought up the discussion of the ordinance requirements for planned unit development, and to paraphrase that 2 of the 5 stated requirements have to be met, conditions have to be met to allow this to go forward as a planned unit development. I am still looking for more information, particularly on item 1. The development offers maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types. And you talk about the variety of lot sizes and the overall density and this type of thing. For the record, the proposal is all for single-family detached housing. Okay, and we consider amongst the single-family detached, there is a variety of other housing types, or other than just size of the house. What kind of variety are we looking at in this proposal in the housing types?
So I'll let the applicant answer more specifically to your questions regarding their collections of houses and why they believe that meets the variety of housing choices. Staff believes it meets the the variety or type of lots that the city council is looking for in some of these developments. So, you are correct that they are proposing just single-family, detached housing, but they're offering different price points through square footage, size, and the type of collection that they're providing for, without reducing the amenities that are available to all of the entirety of the development, and providing for the open space, and that they are not maximizing the density within the development, so they're providing for some good transitional development from what might be, you know, beginner starter houses down to, you know, retirement or even executive type homes out at the lake. And so staff will defer to the hearing examiner's judgment on whether he believes that that criteria is met.
I think this route down, I want to have this discussion anyway. I'll just have a brief form of that. But it is my practice to go through these 5 criteria one by one and give it a yes or a no. I still need more evidence for item 1 about the allowed variety of housing. Item 2, the functionally integrated with development provides services through mixed use. That's clearly no mixed use there. It's all residential. Item 3, so 2 is no. 3, substantiated staff report that meets that criteria. I agree with it about preserves and properly utilizes natural topography, geologic features, etc. So that's definitely a yes. Item 4, land parcels constrained or otherwise limited by some obstacle, feature, etc. The staff does not support that criteria. And number 5, it does not seem to qualify as an infill. So I'll have further discussion with the applicant on that and any who wish to testify on it. But the ordinance does state that it must meet 2 out of those 5 to be treated as a planned unit of development. If those criteria aren't met, the choices are to commercial or office use, make it a mixed use. And it seems that those avenues to comply with the PUD ordinance seem somewhat counterproductive in trying to maintain a larger lot size in a more rural style development. So there is a conundrum here. 2 of the avenues to satisfy these criteria seem to go against the grain of what the city and the comprehensive plan would advocate for this area. Move on from that, just briefly on the additional parking, the so-called 14 required. I believe there is a condition of approval to require those additional parking stalls. That's true. And item 1017, that's okay.
Yeah, 1017.
Yeah. Now, moving on to page 7 of the staff report, it talks about the amenities with a long list under item B required optional amenities to 4 more. So they have essentially 5 playground, tot lot,
As the pocket parks, they also,
Yeah. So that counts towards the 4 items required under the statute.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. I just want to make that clear, and then the additional swimming pool and clubhouse and so forth, meets that criteria. To the setback and area schedule, again, just for the record, they're requesting a variance for 15-foot in the rear yard, or from the 20 feet required to 15 feet. The side yards drop from 6 feet to 5 feet. The minimum lot size 4,000 square feet versus 8,000, and lot frontage width 40 feet versus 50 feet. You think the plan is well executed to allow these variances to the ordinance, and is the plan accommodating to make these work in context?
I do believe that the plan, at least as presented, provides for adequate setback, both interior side yards and rear setback for these properties. There are not a large number of 4,000 square foot lots. There are many that exceed 8, 9, 10,000 square feet within the development. So they've done a great job of coming very close to meeting the standard development density for the R1 zone, low density residential zone, with only being 0.13 gross units over the 3 that could be there, you know, if they just put 8,000 square foot lots throughout the development, which could provide for them to create more than the 327 lots they're proposing.
I think, Mr. You mentioned 327, Stratford 326, is that the correct number?
Yeah, around 326.
And then in the engineering recommendation, they also mentioned a 327, that should be 326.
Actually, yes, and that could be because we had a revision where they had a common driveway in the corner, right in that southeast corner of the where it steps down, and they removed that common driveway due to some requirements of the PUD requiring that all residential lots take access to a public street. And so, so that was changed.
They lost a lot.
They lost a lot, yeah.
Okay. So I just want to clarify that because the memo is still in the record at 327. We talked about or engineering about the wider street widths that are proposed here. Is that the applicant's choice? That's their design to provide the wider street width, the bike path, and so forth.
Right, and I believe that the street width itself is per the standard. The actual landscape buffers and sidewalk, the distance between the street and the sidewalk was increased, is how I believe that TJ indicated to us. And then where the city engineer and the planning director worked with the applicant to provide for the connecting pathway that we needed to connect to the Ballard Park. That pathway, that sidewalk also increased from 5 or 7 feet to an actual 10-foot concrete pathway within the right-of-way dedication along Cirrus Drive.
Okay, let's talk about the park and recreation plan. First of all, I'm just curious, is this location on one of the routes in the bikeway plan?
It is. I believe that the pathway and bike plan would come all the way down Montana, and Rob can maybe speak to that, but there was some consensus between, again, the city engineer and the planning director to take that pathway off Montana, the Montana alignment, and run it to the park, providing for a better, safer route, I guess, to the park through that pathway.
So I'm a little confused there. The pathway is coming down Montana and then we'll divert through this proposal?
Right along
essentially make access to Ballard Park through
right.
this subdivision?
Yes.
If it's approved?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the plan is being fulfilled and implemented as part of this proposal?
It is.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, on the park itself, there are a number of comments in the letters received from the public. I could quote them specifically, but they are concerned about the potential impact of this proposal on Ballard Park. Have you had any specific concerns expressed by the parks regarding that potential impact?
We've not had specific discussions with the Parks and Rec. It was the feeling of staff, again, city engineering, the planning director, myself, that having that connectivity of for the development into the city park from a city development is more than appropriate and provides for safer access for the pedestrian and bicycle traffic that would be coming into the park and utilizing the city resources there.
And so parks have no concern about and in fact, we're quite okay with making the connections to the subdivision directly,
Yes.
And also, of course, on the street. But all right, so there was not an issue.
No, there will be a requirement to make those pathways connecting from where they enter from the development to the pathway. So there may be some requirement for the developer to complete the pathway to the existing pathway in the park. But beyond that, you know, increased usage of the park is, you know, could certainly create some challenges, but the park is there as a city amenity, and this developer will be paying into those funds for those parks and recreation facilities.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned a potential responsibility for the applicant to make a pathway connection off-site through the park. Is that a condition of approval, or is it in a letter from Parks, or where?
I will let the city engineer speak to that.
Mr. Herring, I don't believe that is a condition of approval, but we can certainly make that a condition. The intent really is that we want to have connectivity into the park, at least to that access road that's in there, so that their pathway doesn't end and then they're walking across the grass, and so we can certainly address that.
one more, Mr. McDonald, can you please state your name and address?
Sorry. Rod McDonald, 621 Cleveland Boulevard is work address, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you very much. So we would like to address that potential connection or to the pathway from the proposed subdivision to cross the park. And question about the proximity to the lake bowl reserve there, habitat. There's some expressions in the letters from the public about the impacts this proposed subdivision may have on that. Have you had discussions with BLM or DEQ on that?
No, we have not.
And does this present some kind of concern for staff that impact might be deleterious to that habitat?
Yeah, we received a communication from the Bureau of Land Management just indicating that the refuge was there and that those parcels were there. But this development does not cross or transition onto those Bureau of Land Management parcels nor the Deer Flat Wildlife Refuge. The area is primarily developing as residential and was expected to develop as residential. And we do not feel that there would be significant difference or more impact. Clearly, whenever density increases, there is some impact. We do not believe it's detrimental impact, any different than the development that's currently existing in the area and that has been increasing in the area at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Drew. I think that answers my next question. I'm looking at communication letter, exhibit PA4 from BLM dated August 10th, that they'd received August 10th to the Planning and Zoning Department. And the statement is any development not consistent with the purpose for which this patent was granted on the plan of development could cause the property to be subject to reversion under the code. So I believe what you're telling me is that that condition is not a concern and it would not be in any way changed by this proposed development.
Correct. I was just speaking with the city engineer, and that the Mallard Park was granted to the city by the Bureau of Land Management, so that maybe in consideration of the property that the park is situated on. But the park is not intended to be anything other than a park, and therefore it is being utilized the way that the land grant was intended.
Thank you. And then Mr. McDonald, just for my own edification, what offsite improvements to the road system are going to occur should this be approved?
Thank you, Mr. Haney-Zandler. That is a great question. Development is obligated to improve all of their frontages that are adjacent to public roadway. In this case, 10th Avenue, where they connect to 10th Avenue, they would be improving 10th Avenue, their entire half street, which is the east side of 10th Avenue. Where they connect to Orchard, they would be improving the entire north side of Orchard. And where they connect to Montana, they would be improving the entire west side of Montana, which is the typical road section. 10th Avenue is a minor arterial, so it would be built to that standard. Orchard is a minor arterial, if I'm not mistaken, and then Montana is a collector. In addition to that, Sears Point is also a collector that cannot have any direct access from residential development or residential units, and that will also be built to collector standard. And then I will mention also, in addition to that, the development is obligated to provide traffic mitigation, which is above and beyond those improvements to a value of somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000. And that's to help mitigate other locations in the area or other intersections that may be impacted by the traffic generated from this site.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Now, on those intersections with public right-of-way, are there going to be any additional lanes, right-in or turn-in lanes, or anything of that nature to service this development?
Mr. Harrington, are you referring to the access points into the site or to?
Off of Orchard 10th in Montana, there could be additional lanes or turning lanes developed for this?
Yes. So in the staff report, the engineering staff report, it identifies that any intersection where you have classified streets coming together, which would be any type of street that's not residential, there's always a right-hand turn lane that is required. And that helps separate the right-hand turn movements from the through movements. And then in addition to that, the full road section of 10th Avenue, Orchard, and Montana will all ultimately include a left-hand turn lane as well, or a center lane that can be used for a left-hand turn lane to help mitigate that movement as well, in and out of the site and as you approach the intersections. At the locations where they are not at the intersection, for example, Montana and Orchard, they're not constructing that intersection because they're not adjacent to that intersection. That would be part of the Sears Point development, which would connect down there. And then I will mention too, also at the 10th Avenue and Orchard, the city has been trying to put together a project to complete the frontage along that, and we're hoping to have that off the ground in the next, hopefully in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, you did bring up the adjacent subdivision. Perhaps David can answer that. What is the density of that subdivision? The comparative growth and net density?
So Sears Point, which is adjacent to the east of this development, is a low-density residential development. I believe at the time that development was approved, it's 2.5 units per acre.
So just even in ballpark with this one at 3.1.
Yeah, pretty commensurate lot sizes. The lot sizes are, range in size from 8,000 to 15,000 square feet typically. So it's very similar in development with the exception of the 4,000 square foot lots in this development.
And approximately when was that plat granted, and is it under the same comprehensive plan in effect today?
That plat was granted in 2005 for 393 lots, I believe. There's still about 223 approximate lots to be developed, and then an additional 2 phases that have not gone through a hearing process, one of which is would be located in this southeast corner of this development, where that blank rectangle is, and then a triangular piece across Montana, where they had initially intended a realignment of Montana Road, but that they have since changed decided not to do that, but again, so those two parcels or portions of the property are not currently under plat approval. The phases 6, 7, and 8 are currently, the preliminary plat was time extended for phase 6 with a requirement of city council to, bring phases 7 and 8 with the proposed realignment of the road, back to hearing through another time extension application to provide for public, review of those amendments, which was a realignment of Sears Drive to align with this development's proposed alignment, and also the realignment of Montana on that plat. And so we have that application in our office currently, and the developer has complied with the intent of what that application is to be going back to city council. So.
Thank you, Ms. Fruit. I believe that concludes my questions for staff. At this time, I'd like to have the applicant come up and make their presentation. Please state your name, address, and get sworn in.
Mr. Hearing Examiner. My name is Jeff Bauer. My address is 601 West Bannock in Boise, and I am here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Toll Brothers, Toll Southwest. We have a few folks from our development team with us tonight, Adam Capel and Ryan Hammonds from Toll Brothers, and Sonia Delighton. She's our traffic engineer, and she's with Kittleson and Associates. So if you pepper me with questions like you did staff, they should be able to help out as well.
1 second, please. Could you state your address and if you've been sworn in, please?
Yes, address is 601 West Bannock, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Proceed.
Thank you. So we are here tonight on the Pasero Ridge subdivision. Before I jump into the details, I did want to give Mr. Hearing Examiner just a brief background on Toll Brothers. This is our first project in the city. Toll Brothers is a national home building company. They're a Fortune 500 company that won many awards throughout the nation for single-family residential building. They employ 150 folks in the Treasure Valley, in addition to local builders, consultants, and traffic engineers, for instance. Toll Brothers, they are not just a development company. They take projects from entitlements all the way through construction. And so they take a lot of pride in their architecture as well as design. That's one of the reasons we tend to favor this PUD process, because it lets us provide amenities in our communities that we know our residents are going to want. Okay, turning to the application before you, Pasero Ridge, as has been discussed in quite a bit of detail, I'll try to run through the details of the application and then just hit on the questions that Mr. Hearing Examiner had. So we do have a 104-acre site. It is just north of Lake Lowell. It is, I think this is a key component of this application. This property is already annexed and designated with R1 zoning. So it has R1 entitlements for a subdivision. The comprehensive plan does designate this property as low-density residential, so the zoning is in conformity with the comprehensive plan. As Ms. Root mentioned, we have been working with staff pretty extensively over the last, I would say, 6 months to work out planning as well as engineering comments. The plat has undergone some revisions to accommodate, interpretations of city code and comments from staff. And so at this point, we have really no further comments. We agree with staff's analysis in the staff report, and we also agree with all of the conditions of approval in the staff report, barring one, which I'll discuss. again, Pasero Ridge subdivision, before you tonight, two applications, planned unit development, which the purpose is to deviate from some of the R1 standards. And then the second application is preliminary plat. The plat is going to request 326 lots, on the 104 acres, so we have a density of 3.13 units per acre. Turning to open space, the planned unit development ordinance requires 10% qualified open space. So that's one of the trade-offs when you do a PUD, you have to provide additional open space. We've done that, we meet the 10% standard. In addition to providing 10% of qualified open space, we do provide approximately 20% total open space on the site. So that includes landscape buffers, road medians, things like that. But some of that is also usable, as Ms. Root mentioned. So our irrigation infiltration, which is basically just going to be a usable grass field, those are about 1.7 acres. So we would argue that we have about 12% usable open space, 10% qualified open space. Also important, on this open space plan, we do fulfill the intent of the city code here with the PUD. As you can see, we've spaced all of our open space out throughout the community. It's not just in one location, and it's also connected through pathways, internal, not just sidewalks. So we have pathways running throughout the community to provide access to those common areas. Here is our pathway and trail system map. As was discussed, we are accommodating the city's regional master plan through our community. So we've taken it off Montana and routed it through the center of our project. That'll give regional pedestrian connectivity to Mallard Park. We think that's important, not just for our residents, but for all the folks around us, including all the future residents of the Sierra subdivision. The blue lines on the plat show our internal HOA managed pathways. These are the ones that the city code calls for to connect to our common area. And then lastly, we are providing sidewalks throughout all the streets. Okay, turning briefly to the amenities in those common areas. The kind of central anchor amenity of the community is this pool, which will include a pool house and 2 pickleball courts. That was one, Mr. Hearing Examiner, that you missed on your list of qualified amenities. So in addition to the tot lots and the pool, we would argue that the pickleball courts also qualify. I think that puts us at 6 or 7 amenities above the 4. So yeah, in addition to the main amenity, which is kind of in the center there, you can see the pool and the pool house, we are offering multiple tot lots, picnic areas, benches. I sort of got a kick out of this one in the upper left. Our landscape architects called those play boulders. So they're designed for kids to interact with nature more there and use those boulders and benches to play. So the PUD application does, again, seek deviations from your standards. You went over those in quite a bit of detail, but here they are again for you. Rear yard, 15 setback, interior side 5. We are asking for a minimum lot area reduction, but our average lot size is over 8,000 square feet. So the average lot size in this community slightly exceeds the R1 standard. And then lastly, a minimum lot frontage deviation from 50 to 40. I probably will regret this, but while I'm here, I'm going to answer your questions about the PUD and whether we qualify for it. I'm going to focus on factor number 1, which seems to be the hearing examiner's main question at this time. And what that factor says is, the development offers a maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types. I'll get into those building types in a minute, but it does not specifically require a mix of residential uses, such as multifamily or two-family. All it requires is a maximum choice of living environments. And I think you have to look at that through the lens of the zoning. So here we have R1, low-density zoning. The comp plan designates us as low density. Multifamily is prohibited in the zone, and a two-family would be a conditional use, but certainly the city wouldn't want to take the position that the PUD wouldn't be allowed in the R1 zone. So this is the best you can do to provide multiple styles of single-family housing to fulfill that requirement. And again, we worked with staff quite a bit to provide that range that we believe and they believe meets that first criteria. Okay, turning to sort of the nitty-gritty utilities issues. We are going to be able to provide, as Ms. Root said, full city services to the property. For pressure irrigation, we'll provide that through a on-site well. One important factor here is that we are going to stub our pressure irrigation lines to Mallard Park. That's been a request of the city to help alleviate some water pressure issues there. So we're going to build and dedicate that pressure irrigation system to the extent needed in the park. Water, potable water is already in our frontage on Orchard. Sewer, we will be constructing a lift station to serve our property that gets our line out to Orchard, where there is capacity for our project. And lastly, as to traffic, which I suspect there will be some comments about, and I think Sonia will probably address in our rebuttal, but we do fully agree with all the conditions of approval from staff. We will be making those significant right-of-way dedications on our frontages, as well as significant improvements to those public roads. And again, also a collector road through the center of our property, a public road that benefits the public at large. Real quick, phasing plan. Pasero Ridge is broken into 6 different phases. And in the bottom of the slide, I have the forecasted time when we expect to break ground on those phases. Important to Toll Brothers, and you'll see this as we bring more projects through to you. You'll see that in phase 1 and 2 are our main amenities. We always try to build our biggest community amenity in the first phase, so that those first residents can enjoy the pool and the open space. And so we're doing that same thing here. This gets to Mr. Hearing Examiner's questions about the mix of housing. So we are providing 3 different, we call them collections. The first collection is the Arbor Collection. These homes range in size from, they actually don't range very far. These are all in the neighborhood of 1,800 square feet. And I'll flip back real quick to the phasing plan. The Arbor Collection, these compact 1,800 square feet homes, they're going to be in phase 3, so up at the northeast corner. Those are our narrower lots. So again, this is a compact style, single family product, very popular with younger folks, married folks, as well as empty nesters. No yard to take care of, but all the amenities of a single family home. The next style is our Garden Collection. The Garden Collection will be on the sort of mid-sized lots in the community. These homes range in size from 1,200 square feet to 2,400 square feet. And then lastly is the Woodland Collection. These are on our large lots, as Ms. Root mentioned, sort of at the exteriors of the site. And these homes range from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet in size. Okay, and now I will get to just again, the one point of contention discussion that we continue to have, with the staff report, there is a condition of approval, condition number 10.17, that requires, off-site parking. So, I watched Mr. Hearing Examiner recently, and I know this has been an issue that's come up. So under the city code, when we propose a lot that is 45 feet or less in width, the code requires one off-site parking space per 4 units. So we have 56 lots that are less than 45 feet. And again, that's all in phase 3. So with a strict interpretation of the code, that would require 14 off-site parking spaces. We can accommodate those 14 parking spaces. On the slide I've shown you right here, you can see we have one small little pocket park up on the north side of the boundary there. We could very easily turn that into a parking lot with 14 spaces, but we don't think that will serve our residents well, and so we are asking for a deviation from the standard. We think a deviation is warranted here, because there is more than adequate parking for these folks. So again, 56 lots in phase 3. Each of those lots have a 2-car garage as well as a driveway. And we did a parking study on this street that all these lots front on, and that street can accommodate 68 additional vehicles. So in total, in phase 3, with both on-site and off-site parking, we have 292 spaces available, or 5.2 spaces per home. And again, we understand staff's interpretation of the code, but we think you do have the discretion to deviate from the off-site parking here. And I think we can all certainly agree that 5.2 spaces per home is not necessary here. And for that discretion, I just point you to the Planned Unit Development Code, 10-3-7. It speaks to latitude and discretionary powers. This is kind of the whole purpose of the planned unit development, which is to be creative and look at what best serves the community and the development. So in conclusion, we have, as Mr. Root mentioned, carefully designed this project to meet all the standards in the PUD ordinance. We think that this is a great opportunity for a PUD. It's pretty rare to find 104 acres contiguous that you can master plan to provide these kinds of amenities. And with it being around Ballard Park, we think that this is a perfect location to have that creativity, provide those connections, and so we'd ask for your recommendation of approval. And I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. I do have some questions, if you will bear with me on that. To the last point about the on-street parking, I'm looking at this diagram here on the screen showing the northwest quadrant of your development. And there are, in the street itself, there appear like concrete boxes or bulbs out depicted there. What is that?
So, Mr. Hearing Examiner, great question. At this point.
Yeah, but it doesn't come up well on that.
Okay. So I'm gonna, actually, to answer your question, I'm gonna go back a couple slides. So again, we're talking about phase 3, and so the only road in question that we studied parking on is that very farthest north road. The islands that you're seeing, we did not study parking. We would not propose parking on that main entrance there. If you look closely at this slide, on that northernmost road that terminates in a cul-de-sac to the east, the gray boxes on the road illustrate the 68 on-street parking spaces.
Thank you. And that is just a striping configuration, or there any curb to denote that parking, or they're just simply painting on the road?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we wouldn't propose designating these or striping or painting. we would just propose using this, like you would any, residential neighborhood street. I park in front of my house some days, when my wife's blocking the driveway, and we think it would be used flexibly, like that.
And on that, the city has criteria for on-street parking, on public right-of-way. Are you going to address, on-street parking and the, conditions, for the subdivision itself, for the homeowners, CC&Rs?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we haven't gotten that far, but we certainly can address that if needed. Again, this is, we don't anticipate preventing folks from on-street parking in the neighborhood. We don't think they will need to, because we're providing more than adequate off-street parking. But to the extent, the city wants to see some special, regulation or condition in our private covenants, we'd certainly be willing to entertain that.
Yeah, that's a suggestion. We don't go to CC&Rs. But I appreciate the answer and the depictation of those stalls, proposed on that roadway. You said that's the only part of the subdivision where you've, taken pains to draw that out, but the on-street parking would pertain throughout the subdivision.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, that's correct, and again, the only reason why, we've gone through that exercise is because those phase 3 lots are the ones, that are less than 45 feet in width, so that's why we're looking at providing that additional parking in the area, which is what the city code, tries to achieve.
And on that note, is there any part of the development set aside for things like recreational vehicle storage?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, if you're referring to like an RV style garage, no. We are not planning any of the oversized interior storage. It'll just be standard garages. Oh, never mind. I'm getting corrected. We will have an option for some oversized RV garages.
But that's all going to be in the individual parcels, not as a development-wide space available for RVs.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, that's correct. So it'd be, as folks are, designing their specific home, that's an option that they can select.
Thank you. To the park question, you have a fine array of pocket parks here in shared facilities, swimming pool and so forth. And we had a discussion with staff and engineer about continuing a regional pathway through development and connecting through Ballard Park. Have you had any discussion with the parks or the staff about what that would look like, and do you have some ideas on how to make that connection into the park itself?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we have had that discussion, I believe, with the city engineer. And I think what you're referencing would be the continuation south of the red public path. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I spoke with my client before giving the presentation. What the city engineer represented was correct. We're happy with the condition of approval that we either pay for, or that we actually make that connection with the city's approval to the south. I think it's not a great picture, but you can see there's internal paths at Ballard Park, and we'd accept a condition to connect to that existing path.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Now, you showed the elevations, the prospective designs of the proposed housing types. Is this a closed universe of housing types that would be allowed, and the builders aren't going to control the housing types, through this array that's being offered. In other words, we see different kinds of designs that we're not seeing in this application.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, is the question about, like size and location, or more of an architectural question? Architectural. I might defer to Adam on that, but I can say that, again, Toll Brothers, we're not just a developer, or an entitler, but Toll Brothers will construct these homes. And so what you're seeing here are architectural examples of the elevations that will be constructed.
Okay, so it's a fairly closed universe in your mind as far as the design, overall design.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, that's correct. That's correct. But Adam can add to that. Come on up, Adam.
State your name, address, and been sworn in, please.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, Adam Capel, address 3103 West Sherrill Drive, Meridian, Idaho, and I've been sworn in.
Thank you.
To your question about the architectural styles, each one of these collections has a number of different floor plans, and each floor plan has several elevations that can be selected, and with each floor plan, there's numerous options. So when you combine all of those various floor plans, elevations, and options, it really turns into endless amounts of elevations that can be developed within the community. I hope that answers what you're looking for.
Yes, so 1 second, please. So, are you the architect of record on this proposal?
No, I'm not the architect of record, but Toll Brothers is the builder of the homes, and Toll Brothers does design them and build them.
Okay, and then I'm just trying to get a handle on perhaps stating a conditional approval about limiting this particular universe of design to the project. Would that be fair to the intentions of the owners and builders?
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking there. Would you mind repeating that?
Well, it's all going to fall on the same bag of tricks. There won't be more or different. In other words, you're as part of the proposal, you're showing us something that you intend to do, and how seriously should we take that? And should it be conditioned, you think, would that constrict your business model to have this approach in design condition as part of the approval?
Yeah, what we're representing here generally depicts what will get built out. I'll let Jeff answer that, but we certainly can provide more comprehensive elevations if that's something that the city would be looking for as we move on to council. But Jeff can follow up with that question.
Great, thank you very much.
And yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I just tag onto that. What we see commonly in the city of Meridian is, in our decision, they do attach our plans, and the condition is, something to the effect of, in conformance, with the architectural style of the elevation submitted.
Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to pose a question to you about the northern property in the inactive gravel pit there. How have you looked at that as some kind of safety hazard to the potential residents of this area?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we don't view it as a safety hazard. One of the first things that we do when we get on site is to construct our fencing. So, before any residents or occupants are in these homes, there's going to be a 6-foot full fence on that property line. And I think the other thing that's important to remember here is that while that might be a vacant, undeveloped site, it is not, to my knowledge, an active extraction site. So it's owned by, I believe, the Adventist Church and a developer to our north. So, we believe it's just a matter of time before those sites are also developed, and so we don't view that vacant property as any sort of hazard.
Thank you for the answer. Have you or any of your fellow compatriots looked at that specifically, and could you just describe to me how that's going to look from your property boundary and then separation from the pit that is there? I just want to understand what that looks like to you and what we're going to see if this proposal is approved.
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I think I can answer. So our site does slope upward from the south to the north. So generally speaking, that on that north side, we're looking down at Lake Lowell. There's a little rise there, not significant, but some rise. We don't view this as any. I guess we don't view it as unique in any way. There will be 15-foot setback from our homes to that rear property line, and at that rear property line, we will have our 6-foot privacy fence. Same as if it was an irrigated field behind us or other homes.
And thank you for the answer. Could you tell me approximately what the drop is? What's the vertical drop into that pit?
Mr. Hearing Examiner,
Roughly.
I don't. The city engineer might have that answer for you.
I don't have the actual answer, but I would guess it's 20 to 25 feet potentially. And I think the side slopes are sloped fairly safe. It's rather steep, but it's been that way for a while, and so I don't see that there's a lot of erosion, continual erosion going on or anything like that.
Okay, it's like 2 to 1, Ms. McDonald. 2 to 1, 3 to 1.
I think it's probably steeper than 3 to 1. It may be a 2 to 1 or maybe approaching a 1 to 1, but I wouldn't say it's any steeper than that for sure.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Ballard, have you discussed internally as part of this proposal any kind of mitigation on that northern boundary other than the fencing, the setbacks? You don't see that as a concern?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, at this time, no. I don't believe we do view it as a concern.
Okay, thank you. And just one more follow-up. On the very northwest corner of the proposed subdivision, and the closest point on 10th Avenue to that, do you know what that corner looks like as far as, is that fenced off? Is that property fenced off?
Are you talking in relation to the...
Along 10th and...
So on the west boundary of our property? Where it's
the northwest corner. I just want to know what that looks like. My concern here is just, mainly safety of children,
right,
using that as their playground, opposed to that lovely park to the south.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's just an opinion, that's all I'm talking about here.
And so you're talking specifically about I believe that's a buffer, not qualified open space on that northwest corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, does your fencing go to the right of way?
So go ahead.
Yes, Adam again, 3103 West Cheryl Drive, where you know. Yeah, the fence will go to the right of way. There'll be a perimeter fence all the way around. It'll also be likely in conformance with whatever city requirements, barricades at each of the terminating sidewalks as they're heading north to prevent pedestrian access beyond our property limits, unless those are improved in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer. Okay, moving on. I just pose a question to you that I posed to staff as far as the potential impact on Mallard Park, from this development. What is your thinking about that? Would it be average, like any other group of people, or, you've got parks on your site that are also serving that purpose? Just, like some comments on that potential for impact on Mallard Park.
Yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I appreciate the question, and I also really appreciate the viewpoint. We are providing a lot of open space amenities for our residents. I think it would be disingenuous to suggest that we're somehow trying to piggyback on a community amenity in the city park. So we are doing everything that's required of us to improve our project for our residents to provide that open space. More so than if this were a straight sub where we wouldn't have the open space requirement. So by doing the PUD, we would be taking some heat off of that public park. But I think I agree with Ms. Root. I think that every city I've ever been to really advocates for connectivity to those community assets. I think we should be looking to safe routes to the park. For each stub into that park, it's one less trip on the road, and a safer way to get there. So I don't see that as a concern at all, and I think, again, most cities would be very supportive of a design like this to utilize those amenities that you spend so much money on.
Thank you, appreciate the answer. And then just one more question, well, maybe not one more, but what's the elevation drop from the northern boundary to the southern boundary on this property?
That's what you were going to ask me a minute ago, and I started to look. I can tell you, give me 1 second. The southern portion of the property, the grade of elevation increases from 2550 to 2576.
Okay, so we've got 76 feet of drop across the property.
26 feet.
26, I'm sorry. Okay. Appreciate that. That speaks to the conditions required for a PUD. With that, that's all the questions I have, and if you have anything to add to that, you're welcome, and you'll have a chance to rebut.
If I could, just real quick, because I know there are going to be comments, and we'll get into detail again with this with Ms. Delighten, but we did do a traffic impact study. We are in agreement with the offsite mitigation fee to mitigate our impacts, and I think the most critical piece of the traffic impact study is the takeaway is that all of the street sections that we studied function at an acceptable level of service, and they will continue to function at an acceptable level in 2026 with the build out of our project. So that's what the TIS found.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like testimony from the public. The first person I have on who signed up is Sonia Delden. I'm sorry if I messed that up. Sonia, would you like to testify, please?
Thank you. Sonia Delighten with Kittleson and Associates. Again, we are the transportation engineer. We prepared the traffic impact study for the development. I don't have anything to add at this time unless there are additional questions or comments that come up through the remainder of the public testimony, but thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I do have one question. Just describe, let's say, the ease of bike and pedestrian travel through this development, given your street layout.
Yeah, excellent question. I think I will also, do you want me to add my address and confirm I've been sworn in.
Please, yes.
Sonia Delyden, Pittleson and Associates, address is 101 South Capitol Boulevard, Suite 600, Boise, Idaho, 83702, and yes, I have been sworn in. To answer your question regarding the ease of bike and pedestrian travel within the development, there's several features of the layout, I think, that contribute to promoting and encouraging safe and pleasant bike and pedestrian travel. The first is the amenities provided, so that would be sidewalks along all of the streets, and then the internal pathways. I don't know if you want to, I don't know who's got control now, but you could flip to that figure that does show the, thank you, the trail system and pathway system internal to the development. And then also just the connection to the more regional pedestrian and bicycle connection along Montana. So all of those help with connectivity for bicycle and pedestrian travel. And then the last feature I'll comment on is just the block spacing, street spacing. As you can see, there is good connectivity within the internal street spacing that also allow for connectivity of those sidewalk and pathway connections.
Thank you very much. And I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have no one signed up as neutral in this, but we do have 4 people wish to testify in opposition. The first is Buzz Beauchamp, please. Mr. Beauchamp.
I used my common name of Buzz Beauchamp.
Sir, your name, address, and have you been sworn in?
Yes, sir. I submitted the letter. Leslie Beauchamp is my legal name. My address is 15244 Bald Eagle Avenue, Caldwell, Idaho, 83607. Yes, I have been sworn. I will try to contain my anger. I don't envy your position in making this decision, Mr. Hearing Manager. I do have some questions. Has anybody from staff or you been out to the actual site of this proposal? Have you laid your eyes on this property?
We're all residents of the area and quite familiar with it. As hearing examiner, I'm not allowed to review the site under precedence in the Supreme Court.
Okay. In that case, I also have this question. Is there a planned unit development like this anywhere inside the city boundaries at this point?
Well, I would prefer that you offer testimony. This is
Yes, sir.
not 20 questions, but, you know, the answer to that, yes, there are similar developments to that, but to catalog that would take some time, and it's outside the purview of this hearing.
I will go back and offer testimony. From 1981 through 2005, I lived at 1522 Dearborn in the city, 5 blocks from the College of Idaho. My lot was 7,500 square feet. I had a 4-story house on that, approximately 3,400 square feet. I had off-street parking from the alley, and the streets were approximately 60 feet wide. I don't know how wide these streets are, but I view it as, from a site plan, it looks like it might be inadequate. I don't know. They haven't offered any testimony on access for garbage trucks or fire department of that sort. We built a house in the Overage East subdivision in 2004, moved in 2005. If we could go to one of the satellite maps, please. That's good enough. If you notice on the extreme let's see. If you notice it says Crane Street, where the sign says Crane Street.
Right.
There's a 3-acre park. I live very close to that. I live about 500 feet from the proposed subdivision. I view this as not being contiguous with all the other development in the area. I'm very shocked at the 4,000 square foot lot size. My lot is 21,000 square feet. I was designated through the county's ordinances because, yes, I do have my own well and septic. I called up Chief Wendelsdorf from the City of Caldwell Fire Department, and I asked, okay, so they do have water service, I know that because there are hydrants, but I said, what about the sewer? And he said, well, they'll have to run the sewer down to Florida, because that's where the stub is. And I don't understand how they say that they're going to connect to a main line that's on Orchard. Since 2005, I have not seen any type of sewer mitigation on Orchard, Montana. They're currently building service on Indiana for a site, but I don't understand how they're going to provide that. My other concern is from the frontage for the improvements for the streets, for the access, the 3 access points to the subdivision, they're only going to improve about 30% of the roadway. Now, all the roadways in that area are Highway District number 4 of the county. And I don't understand how they're going to make the streets adequately wide to support the traffic. Right now, there's plenty of traffic. Orchard from Montana to 10th Street is a 45-mile-per-hour zone. Are they going to request that the county, Highway District number 4, decrease that to 35? It doesn't make sense. I do not understand how they are going to put that many people on the existing roads without any further improvements beyond their subdivision. And I think that that's a very grave concern. If you look at all the other subdivisions to the west, they're all smaller lots, or larger lots with smaller houses. I don't understand how they're going to put that many people. I estimated 981 based on 327 houses. That's a lot of people in 104 acres. I think that's woefully inadequate. There are a lot of engineering questions that I would have that you know, I don't have the expertise to ask at this point, but I would do some investigation to find out. But I think that this is not the right type of development for this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And with that, we'll address some of those questions in discussion with the staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Dave Ballard. If you wish to testify, please.
My name is Dave Ballard. I also live at 15094 Greenway Street, which is also in the Overlake East community. I have been sworn in.
Okay. That's Caldwell, Idaho, correct?
Caldwell, yeah, thank you. Most of the concerns really are not for the developer so much. I mean, yeah, I have questions since I've been hearing what's been going on tonight. Most of it is road access and egress. 10th Street, Orchard, and Montana are 2-lane roads, and not only are they dangerous to walk on, so anybody trying to walk on those roads or ride their bike, I'm not laughing, I'm concerned about it, because there's nowhere to go. Those roads are so tight, and they're tight like that all the way down to Caldwell Boulevard. Same thing with Karcher Boulevard. It's bad right now, and I know they're already planning an upgrade, but we go down Orchard all the time because it's dangerous to go on Karcher because it's not adequate. There's too much traffic and people try to get ahead of you and cut their way in. It's a dangerous place. So to add, say, 2 trips a day per household, you're talking about, I don't know what the average is, 2 or 3 trips a day for an average household, but you're talking about 600 more cars either going down Karcher or going down Orchard, and it hasn't been designed, it hasn't been planned for that yet. We don't have that kind of access, and it's very concerning. Speak to the housing developments in the area, I believe Cirrus is on the right-hand side, it's already developed, right? There's some that, in Cirrus Point that have been developed?
There are 159 lots.
Okay, and they're about quarter acre lots, average, some are up, some are below.
About 8,000 square feet.
Okay.
8 to 10,000.
Okay, but those areas are city, and I understand this development's in the city, and we're just outside the city. Not because we wanted to go on well, it's because we had to. The services were not out there yet. And as you build more and more houses out, those services came out, and at this point, we could have done that. But the average home in that area is not a quarter acre. Ours are half acre, behind us are half acre. To the, west, Moonstruck, they're average 1 acre plus. Moonstruck West is 1 acre plus. A little farther up, northwest, they're 1 to 2 acre properties. I know there's a difference between city and county, but that's not really a difference there. You're looking at lifestyle choice of people who were willing to move out there, pay the money, and live that area. I don't understand why we build that many homes in our area. Yes, your city, there are different ordinances, I get it, but the infrastructure has not been built up to take all those homes, and they're not like the other homes that in that area. If you go west, right across the street, like Bo, I'm right across the street, I can hear the noise from the park. Fireworks during the 4th of July were horrendous, at the park. Those are my major concerns. And again, access to that park, there's no way, I appreciate their design, I think it's a great design, but there's no way they cannot impact Mallard Park. People up the upper corners and areas of that, development, there's no way they're gonna walk a half a mile or quarter of a mile to those, egresses to the park. They're gonna drive, they're gonna walk, they're gonna do whatever. Those pits, I would be surprised if they're 20-foot deep. The only reason they haven't been developed is because they're too deep and there'd be too much money to mitigate whatever's down there, whether it be hazardous materials or whatnot, and to fill that in. So that will never be, I can imagine being developed. So my only thought during this testimony was, there needs to be a big fence there, so kids don't go down, people don't go down there and get hurt. I heard that question from you about that, and I was thinking about that while you were talking about it. Turn lanes, I believe they're talking about putting turn lanes on 3 roads that's gonna come into, I believe. Those really turn into, people park out there anyway. If you go down Orchard or any other areas, if there's a full length of the property, the size of the property, those turn lanes are talking about, or just into the egress of the property? The turn lane.
Please address your questions to me.
Oh, excuse me. So on the side, on, 10th Street and Orchard and Montana, I think I heard they're going to make a turn lane the entire length of those properties, right? Okay, so that's, it's only egress in certain areas. What I've seen on Orchard and other places is people park trucks and semis and whatnot out there anyway. So whether that turn lane's gonna help anything, I don't know. And those streets are so narrow, it doesn't really, unless they widen it, it's not gonna do any good to mitigate traffic, is my thought. And again, the lot that they're trying, the amount of houses they're trying to get into just doesn't seem right for the area, even though Sears Point may be approved, the new houses, and the other Sears Point are quarter acre. That's not what it looks like for the rest of us in that area. I think that's it.
Thank you for your testimony. Next sign up is it Jeremy? Help me out here.
I'll spell it out for you in just a minute.
Name, address, and have you?
Yes, sir. My name is Jeremy Fife, F-E-U-C-H-T. My address is 15032 Kings Road Road, Caldwell, Idaho, 83607. I have been sworn in. Mr. Hearing Examiner, thank you for your time. Thank you for your due diligence here. You've done a great job. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and your questions and the way you've gone about this. I really appreciate it. I was a member of Planning and Zoning here in Caldwell. I was also a member of the city council as well. So I know the job you're doing, and I appreciate that. A couple of items that haven't been addressed that I'm really concerned about. The one is the school. There's only one elementary school in that area, and that is Lakeview Elementary. My 2 kids go there. Going down Orchard right now isn't a big deal. Add 326 houses, and you're looking at another 700, 800 cars, that's gonna put some toll on there. So something that current impact fees aren't going to be able to cover. Obviously, these impact fees don't handle it. I'm also on the impact fee committee. I'm also on the HOA board in my subdivision. That'll be just off of one of the main entrances for this new development. Not necessarily against this development, but I do have some major reservations, as I just mentioned, the school. The other things to mention too is this park is a day use only. We need to validate that this is going to continue to be a day use only situation. Currently, as the people that have gone before me have mentioned, it doesn't always happen. We're already in a taxed area in terms of police activity. It doesn't happen very much. Even the county doesn't come out very much. The other thing is too, the firehouse number 2 is 8 minutes with no traffic. 11 minutes is the minimum in order for them to make it out here, and that's a 2-truck station that is heavily taxed because it is in one of the heavier residential areas in terms of its access to the rest of the town. Firehouse number 3 is going further south, further northeast. Firehouse 1 is obviously to the northwest. So this is going to be a very dangerous situation from a firehouse perspective as things continue to grow. Never mind what's going to happen to 10th and the Orchard. That's unrelenting. It's going to happen sooner or later anyway. Same with Montana. My concern though is what's going to happen with Karcher. We're probably going to have to put a traffic light on Montana. As soon as this goes in, yes, that Montana's only a collector, but people will end up using it some way, somehow. And it's going to happen sooner or later anyway, but we are not ready for that kind of development in this area. Compass 2020 hasn't shown much capacity to do much for Karcher Road, and we're not seeing a lot of job development in Caldwell as it is. So these people are going to continue to move out to Boise for their jobs. They're going to stay here, they're going to continue traveling eastbound, and this is only going to make I-84 more difficult, it's going to make Karcher more difficult, and it will only make Orchard more difficult. Now, I think that they've done a great job putting this together, I really do, and I'm actually really happy to see that this isn't a Corey Barton or a Hubble. I'm really excited about that, so congratulations on that, guys. I am concerned that I don't see any Idaho-based contact information on the Toll Brothers website. It's still the 17 other states and Washington, D.C., not in Idaho, so I'm a little concerned about that, but that's neither here nor there. I'm happy it's not Hubble, I'm happy it's not Corey Barton, but again, the big issues still remain that we don't have understanding of how this is going to maintain day use on the park. We don't know how this is going to affect the other areas in terms of schools, and we definitely have an impact on the local economy as dollars still continue to go into Boise and nothing's going to be helped out here in Caldwell. So we're going to put a lot of strain on this. I would actually recommend, having been in your position before, that we do a mixed use in a commercial residential area, and have some sort of idea of how we can get a grocery store and or convenience store location here, because you're looking at going up 10th, and then back down 10th in order to get to the little Walmart, which is abundantly under staffed and abundantly under valued for this area. It just doesn't always have what you need, and it's always jam-packed. So, if we could do something like that, mitigate some of that a little bit, that would drastically help this area. Obviously, then what I mentioned before regarding the fire department as well. And then last thing I would like to mention is I've got a 4 and 5-year-old, and we've already stopped going to the park, and I'm within walking distance because of the number of cars already there. Now, forget the number of cars, that also in terms of the number of people there. So again, I completely get that this area is going to be developed sooner or later, and these folks own that land. They should have the right to do with what as they please. But at the same time, there's got to be some mitigating circumstances, and I think we've met them all with what I've mentioned. And with that, I'll stand for any questions if you have any for me.
No, but I do appreciate your testimony. It's all well-founded and very valid, and we've taken under consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Next, Mr. Fisher, Jeff Fisher? Okay, Mr. Fisher doesn't wish to testify. With that, that's the last of the persons who signed up. And, I'd like to take this opportunity to, express my appreciation that the testimony was all, to the point and brought up some new aspects of this proposal, and I think very important ones. I would like to, talk with the staff a little bit, bring up some of the points, and, then I'll allow the, applicant to rebut. And, but, first of all, I would like to address the last set of fires questions, to the staff and to its concerns. First of all, the fire department and the impact and the fire district, from a development this size. What are the standards for the fire department, and have you had any input from them as far as this development is concerned? Yeah.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I will just mention that the fire department was notified about this hearing and this development, and we received no response or comment back from them. Just to address a couple of the fire concerns, all the roads within the development are built to city standards, and the fire department is aware of what those standards are, and we have traditionally not had any issues with our typical road sections for fire access. Mr. Fife brings up a good point about, the burden on the fire department to serve these areas that are a ways out of town. And all I can tell you is that as development comes in, every single unit that's built has to pay a fire impact fee, and that goes into building up the fire department for future growth. And so, development is essentially paying for itself by providing those impact fees for parks, fire, and police to help provide those services as things build out.
I think the point brought up is I believe you said 8 mile radius to Fire Station 2, this proposed area, and the standard is it 10 miles, 11 miles? From Fire Station, what is the standard for that?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I do not know what the standard is that the fire department holds. I can tell you that from Orchard to Ustick Road is 3 miles, and the fire department is near 10th Avenue, so it's...
I just want to clarify my comment. It was 8 minutes, not 8 miles.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's on 10th in the Ustick is where that fire department is, and it's 11 minutes is the standard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. And the same hand, well, in other words, fire expressed no particular concerns about this proposal. Any specifics, any comments on the plat, proposed plat?
So, Mr. Hearing Examiner, they did not express any specific concerns regarding this development. They have expressed concerns generally because the fire district does not serve just the city of Caldwell. They serve a large portion of the county, and so there are longer response times, certainly to get out to many county areas. And so but regarding this development, they did not express any specific concern.
And perhaps from this route, a similar question about the school districts. They given any specific comment about this development or have concerns about that?
Well, school districts were notified of this application, and there were no specific comments received from them or the bus companies serving them at this point.
Thank you, and, Ms. Root, just, do you know when the property, subject property was, annexed and zoned into the city? Just
We can check that really quick.
more than 10 years, just ballpark.
I believe, yeah, and I believe it was annexed in the 2005 to 2007 timeframe.
Thank you. And there was an adopted comprehensive plan,
2005, it was the
okay,
annexation
and zoning at
application.
that time that, are more or less the same, the current plan and the current zoning?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And Mr. McDonald, just as far as the street impacts, we look at transportation as a community system, in a regional system. The potential for impacts from this proposed development I've seen range of around 10 average trips per day per household, more or less. Is that correct? And could you give us some kind of a time frame on improvements to Karcher, 10th, Orchard in Montana?
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Regarding the traffic, I guess what I would mention is when a development like this comes in, we don't know what the traffic conditions are without conducting a study. And that is the whole reason why Kittleson and Associates was hired to conduct a traffic impact study. Regarding the specific traffic generated by this site, I would probably defer to Mr. Leiden, who may be willing to answer those questions. But what I can tell that after reviewing the traffic impact study is that a two-lane road can handle quite a bit of traffic, and it is clear in the study that based on the trip generation from this development, there are no impacts, generally speaking, on 10th Avenue, Orchard, or Montana. The one area where there is an impact, and frankly, there's already an issue there, is the intersection of Karcher and Montana. And that intersection already has some issues. There's a recommendation here for an arc cut, which is a right in, right out, left in. And that, frankly, is what ITD is proposing to do at that location when they come in and widen Karcher Road all the way through. The timing of the Karcher Road project on ITD is a little bit unclear, but I know that they are pushing to try to fast track that project. And I believe there are sections that will be completed a little further east within the next potentially 2 or 3 years, and then they will move further west. I'm not exactly sure when they're going to get to this point, but I know it's a priority for ITD.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Any more question from Ms. Root as far as the comprehensive plan and the annexation and zoning on this property that occurred, over a decade ago. And those kinds of land uses have been part of the community for that time, and perhaps even earlier. I don't know exactly, but the question specifically is that we had a little bit of a discussion about potential for commercial service office uses in the vicinity. Does the comprehensive plan and or the zoning address commercial office and service uses in this area?
So, thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Yes, and as alluded to in the staff report, the 2040 comprehensive plan, which was adopted February of 2020, provides for commercial mixed-use development along Highway 55, and so it provides for an entire corridor set aside along that, expressway or corridor road versus in these, residential neighborhood, proposed developments, closer to the lake. And so our comprehensive plan does not provide for, future planning of mixed-use commercial development out in this area. But a half mile to the north where, Carter Road, traverses the county and the city properties is where there is identified, commercial mixed-use planning.
Thank you, and that includes, to 10th, intersection of, 10th and Carter Road.
Yes.
And then, one more land use question, as far as, the parcel to the north, the gravel pit. What is the comprehensive plan designation for that in the zoning?
Currently, it's identified as environmentally sensitive, and I'm not sure what my predecessors intended for that, other than that because all of the land has been disturbed or in a disturbed state versus its natural state, that there would be, other mitigation things in order to develop. But I do know that, from my previous work with the county as a planner, those gravel pits do actually end up being developed eventually.
And, taking us through it, and the zoning code addresses environmental sensitive. Did you give me the zoning on that? What is the zoning and what would that allow?
Actually, our current zoning ordinance does not specifically, there is not a specific zoning code for those areas identified as environmentally sensitive. And so it would be contingent upon the applicant for those properties to, bring forth a plan and identify a zoning that's appropriate for that area.
And then, Ms. Ruth, the gravel pit is annexed, or is it still in the county?
Those are county properties still.
Thank you. With that, thanks, Ms. Ruth and Mr. McDonald. I'll allow rebuttal from the applicant.
Mr. Hearing Examiner?
Yes.
I would like to bring something up, with regards to the discussion regarding a fence and the type of fencing. With that being essentially what we would consider wildland, I would like you to entertain the thought of that not being a vinyl fence placed along that gravel pit border, due to the fact that, in order to mitigate weeds and control that and or the potential for wildland fire in there, vinyl fencing does not stand up to any type of heat caused from fire.
An excellent point. Thank you very much, Ms. Ruth. With that, allow rebuttal from the applicant for 5 minutes.
Mr. Hearing Examiner Jeff Bauer, 601 West Bannock, and Boise, Idaho, 83702, and I have been sworn in. Appreciate all the questions, again, extremely thorough, and staff, responded to a lot of the items I was gonna rebut, so I'll be brief. And Sonia is gonna come up after me, she doesn't know it yet, but I volunteered her to talk about the level of service standards and to detail our improvements that we're making again, just so we can get those in the record. To address, all three of the comments that we heard today, I believe, Mr. Hearing Examiner, you're getting to the root of what I was gonna say. This property was annexed, and at that time, the city made the determination that residential development was appropriate here, and the city was able to serve it. So to the extent there are arguments being raised, about service standards, first and foremost, as Mr. Reed said, we haven't gotten any comments from those service providers that there is a problem. But second, and also important, I believe the decision, the discretionary decision has already been made to serve this property by annexing and zoning it. As to whether there are other PUDs in the city of similar size, we don't have an exhaustive list, but we do know of at least one from Brighton, and that's the Arbor project, which I believe, was lauded by the city. As the city engineer mentioned, all of our streets meet the standards. Contiguity isn't an issue here. Again, we're already annexed. I would direct the hearing examiner's attention to condition of approval 10.12. That's a condition that addresses a lot of the fire concerns. It says all requirements from the fire department for access, turnarounds, emergency access, water supply, fire hydrants, et cetera, shall be met in the development and or platting of the subject property. As to density, there were, I believe all three of our opponents tonight commented on that this was inappropriate. And again, I would just remind the hearing examiner that this is already designated as R1. 3 units per acre is allowed. We're really only asking for a minimal increase with the PUD of 3.13 units per acre, and that's to provide all those community amenities. Did want to point out too, that in terms of transition, which we've already discussed, I'd also add that there is an arterial road, a 70-foot right-of-way, maybe 80-foot right-of-way, between this property and the county subdivisions to our west. One of the most critical things I want to get in rebuttal here that my clients reminded me of when I sat down is that during our due diligence in purchasing this, in review of the purchase of this project, we did have a phase 1 environmental study conducted as well as a geotechnical analysis. Neither one of those reports indicated any issue with our ability to develop our site in relation to the gravel pit to the north. So we have studied that, and there are no issues. Adam Capel and Ryan Hammonds wanted me to remind Mr. Fife that they're local, they're based out of Meridian, and they're happy to provide whoever would like their contact information to be a point of contact on this project as it goes forward if there are any concerns. As to the use of the park at night, it is a public space. We're not necessarily in a position to control that, but we're happy to provide the same signage that exists in the parking area about whatever standards the city would like to see there. And I think that's all I have for you, and I'll let Sonia come up and talk just a little bit more about the TIS.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Sonia Delighted with Kittleson and Associates. So first, regarding the traffic impact study and the findings. So the traffic impact study covered intersections along Karcher between 10th and Indiana, and then down both 10th and Montana between Karcher and Orchard, and then along Orchard between 10th and Indiana. And then all of the site access intersections, including the proposed futures, Cirrus Drive and Montana, and Cirrus Drive and 10th Avenue. So all of those intersections were looked at and evaluated, both existing conditions, future conditions, 2026, with and without build-out of the development. And we evaluate those intersections based on the both the city and then for Karcher, ITD's operational standards. So both agencies have adopted standards about the level that they're willing to accept in terms of congestion and delay on those intersections. For the city, it's what we call level of service D, which is a measure of delay, and also volume to capacity. So basically, how much traffic demand is there versus how much the roadway could handle at capacity. And ITD has the same. And what we found with that analysis is Similar to what Mr. McDonald said, I won't repeat him, but all of the intersections are operating both today and in the future, within those thresholds, within those adopted thresholds that the city and ITD allows. The one exception, again, is Karcher in Montana, as was referenced before. What we found with Karcher in Montana is that in the future, by 2026, with or without development of the site, that intersection no longer meets ITD's adopted standards. ITD currently is in an environmental process for the widening and improvements along Karcher in this area. They've got an adopted plan that they're moving forward with and now moving into the environmental stage and design of those improvements. It will include widening of Karcher, as well as what they call that R-cut intersection, basically restricting left turns out of Montana and making them do U-turns further down on Karcher. That's not what we recommended. I'll just clarify, that's not what we recommended. That's ITD's adopted plan for the future improvements along Karcher. Again, that's something ITD is moving forward with designing and funding. With or without this development, it's required. This development doesn't trigger any additional needs beyond what ITD is already planning for. And then Jeff asked me to hit on the specific mitigations that we are providing. So that includes widening 10th Avenue along the site frontage. I think there's been questions asked about how are they going to widen the road. Well, we're actually taking property from, or land right away from this development. We'll be dedicating additional right away to get those turn lanes in, those half-street improvements in that were referenced. So that's along 10th, along Orchard, and along Montana, all along the site frontage. Will be, in addition to just the widening to the city street section on our side, we'll be doing beyond that to get those right turn lanes in at the site accesses that were referenced. And then also constructing the new collector of Cirrus Drive through the site between Montana and 10th. So, anything else? Oh, great, I think we're good, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. And with that, I'll close the testimony, move to the decision phase of this. I would like to apologize to everyone present here for this lengthy hearing. But I think it bears that kind of examination. In particular, I'd like to apologize to people in the subsequent cases that we heard tonight for the delay. But this is what we do as a city. I have for each plan unit development a bit of a ritual going through the zoning ordinance, section 100307, addressing plan unit developments, and the intent is to establish whether the criteria have been met for this to be processed as a plan unit development. We've had this discussion both with staff and with the applicant. They made comments to that effect. I won't read these verbatim, but refer to them under section 100307, subparagraph 2A1. It talks about one of the criteria of the two that have to be met is that development offers maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types. And the staff delineate some of those types, and that was further elaborated by the applicant. And I'd make the finding that they do meet the criteria for item 1. Without going into detail, they do not make the criteria for item 2, nor in item 3. In the staff report, they support the completion or realization of the criteria in item 3, which makes 2 out of the 5 required. In items 4, land parcels constrained. Item 5, development encourages infill. these are not met. So my finding is that this does meet the standard for a planned unit development proposal, and it is duly considered under the zoning code as a planned unit development. And that's sort of the threshold. From there, I do agree with the findings of the staff report. This is a fairly complex proposal, and with a lot of moving parts. One of those specific parts that we talked about is the height, setback, and area schedule, where there is requested variance from the rear side, interior side yard for the minimum lot size and minimum lot frontage. With this action, we'll grant those variances pertinent to those dimensional requirements in the preliminary plat or the site design. This is just to clarify for a proposed 326 units. Nail that number down. I think the nature of this, and part of the inquiry tonight was the status in the comprehensive plan and the current zoning. In land use, in planning for land use, which is what I've devoted my professional career to, the decisions are made in the comprehensive plan essentially as to how the community is going to evolve and look and develop, and what will be developed and what won't be developed, and the type of zoning recommended for those uses. The staff findings here are that the zoning is right for this, the comprehensive plan is right for this, and I support those conclusions. I also appreciate the concerns of the neighbors who are looking at this kind of development. It will radically change the neighborhood, but not necessarily for the worse. It could be for the better. The problem that we solve with this is providing housing in our community within the municipal boundaries, as opposed to developing agricultural land and other sensitive lands in the rural areas of the county. And that's the purview and the purpose, essentially, of the city, is to provide housing and services and other things necessary to orderly growth. And I have the finding that this proposal satisfies the intent of the comprehensive plan and is in accordance with the R1 zoning. I also appreciate the connection with the proposed pathways and the 2040 bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And it's important to establish these pathways as development occurs. That's the only possible way to do this, to develop a pathway plan as development comes around. And with that, the findings of facts for the PUD and preliminary plat are as follows. The Caldwell hearings examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law for the PUD and preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearings examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. And the recommendation, section 8, PUD and preliminary plat, based on the findings of facts inclusive of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number PUD 21-3/sub-21-10, a request for a planning and development preliminary plat for Paseo Ridge subdivision with 326 family residential lots and 40 common lots on approximately 104 acres on parcel R32856 with the designation of R1 low density is approved with the conditions of approval listed in section 10 to be enumerated in a development agreement. The conditions of approval for the PUD and preliminary plat, including the development agreement, fall under section 10.1 and through 10.18 found on pages 19, 20, and 21 of the staff report. And with that, I'd like to add a couple of conditions. Condition number 10.19, the proposal will include a connection with the bike pedestrian pathway through the development to Ballard Park that may include off-site improvements of that pathway to make the connection for the regional path as presented in the Bike and Pathways Plan 2040. Item 10.20, there should be some kind of fencing, landscaping and such to buffer the use, the gravel pit to the north, and somehow to make this as inaccessible as possible from within the subdivision to somewhat reduce the purported attractive nuisance the gravel pit might provide. This condition will be worked out with the staff to find a viable solution that may perhaps include and allow fencing, height, and materials that are not normally associated with the residential development. And with that, conclude my remarks and findings and declare this case closed and moving on to the City Council. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next hearing. Try to go to, we have 3 more cases to hear. They don't have the complexity of the case we just finished. So we'll try to move these along so we can all get home to our loved ones and get a little bit of rest. The next item on the agenda is case number SUP 2111. A request by Overage Development to locate a T-Mobile telecommunications tower on the Valley View High School property located at 1407 Homedale Road, Caldwell. And also, I was remiss in not mentioning, if there's anybody still standing who came to testify in regards to case number SUB 2110 and SUP 2110, having to do with Open Door Rentals LLC for subdivision Virginia Park fourplexes, will be continued to the October 26, 2021 hearing. And I certainly would apologize to anyone who stayed around for that. So with that, I would ask the staff to make the presentation concerning, SUP 2111.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Examiner Katie Phillips, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn in. Tonight before you is a request to allow the construction of a telecommunications tower, which requires a special use permit approval. The subject property is located at 1407 Homedale Road and is zoned R1 low-density residential. The applicant is proposing to replace an existing 80-foot stadium light pole with a new 100-foot cell tower. And although wireless communications facilities are restricted to a height of 80 feet in the residential zone, there is, city code provides a height bonus of 25% as a co-location incentive. The applicant is intending to utilize co-location. Co-location will occur at approximately 96 feet at the pole, and the stadium lights will be added to the pole at 80 feet. The pole will be designed to match the existing stadium lights. The request is consistent with city code, and I will add that this application was processed without receiving a fee, so we will need the applicant to pay that fee. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. In your discussions with the applicant, was there any other site or pole considered for this application, or is it they just fixed on this one particular pole?
The applicant and I did not have that type of discussion. It was their intent to put the pole at this requested location.
Do you have a visual of that on screen?
I do not.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that question is this seems to be the pole closest to the residential area, to the immediate east, and it is considered to be the optimum position for this 100-foot tower. And were there any other alternatives discussed?
That is where the applicant has proposed the pole.
Okay, thank you. Are there any concerns with that? The neighborhood be buried, the impact, the immediate 2 or 3 houses to the east of that would bear the impact of that proposal? Have you had any comments from the public on that?
We've received one in support. The neighbors within 300 feet of the location were notified of this public hearing and the request. And like I said, one person has responded in support of the applicant's request.
Thank you very much. And have you had discussions with the representative of the school, the high school, the Valley View District, in concern of this, or letters detailing their regard for this proposal?
The school is the property owner of the site and has signed the property owner acknowledgement as required with the application. And so I don't know what's occurred between the applicant and the school as far as agreements.
Okay. My question here is, what is the nature of that agreement, and does this application play a part in an agreement between those two parties, essentially the public and a private party, as to the land use, the construction and operation times, and things of this nature? This is typically what we look at say for a sign application, or a wireless communication application, is there, a concern that there should be some kind of, regulation or strictures on the construction and the hours of operation, with this facility?
I don't have any information relating to that, but I can defer that question to the applicant. Perhaps the applicant, can answer that question.
Thank you. The other one, well, I think this is the applicant as well. I had some questions about the physical structure, and what that might look like. The other is, I would like to note that, this is probably in the ordinance, but if this is approved, we do not want the light from the facility to shine off the residential neighbors, and consider that a condition of approval that has to be met. I don't know what it looks like now, or if it's like, I kind of doubt it would be a problem, because we hear about it. Well, I'll say this for later. That is all the questions I had, and thank you. And with that, I would like to address the applicant to come up and make their presentation, please.
I'm not sworn in or anything.
Well, let's get you sworn in.
Okay. And I'm representing T-Mobile.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
It's Gary Martin, and 4565 East Terra Linda Way, Napa.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I don't really have a presentation. I'm just here representing T-Mobile and Rage, who are developing the cell site. I don't know if I can answer any of those questions that I know answers to. I think it originally started the cell site here. There was and I used to work with T-Mobile, so at the time there was talk of Caldwell and Namford schools wanting better coverage for their school properties, and I think this is how it started with the Valley View High School, and they went around looking for different options on the Verizon situated on top of the roof at Valley View, and T-Mobile noticed that we've done this option before where we've taken down the stadium lighting, put in a taller one up, and we put the antennas below. Also, we put the lights back up at the same height, facing exactly the same way, and then the antennas go up above the light. And so that was I know that light pole was pointed out to be the best location for the area of coverage that they're trying to get. And I know that there is a lease agreement between T-Mobile and the Valley View High School. I don't have a copy of that, but there is a lease agreement between them. And then the physical structure is basically exactly the same as what's there right now, just going to be 100 foot and with the antennas on it and the lights exactly the same location, pointing to the baseball fields. I think that's about it.
Thank you for your testimony. I do have some questions. Let's go to the lease agreement. Do you know the nature of that? Does it include hours of operation, things that might interfere, addressing things that might interfere with the operation of the school and the school facilities?
Yeah, so T-Mobile have 24/7 access clause in the agreement, so that the technicians can get there if the site goes down. compound, and that was mainly decided to put there so that, children didn't like wander on in and, start playing around. But generally, there's that road that goes by the side between the houses, and there's a little canal there as well. And so, I mean, the noise is very minimal. There will be a generator on site, but that goes inside the shelter so that the noise is suppressed. And so there's no noise from that, even when the generator's running. But 24/7 access is usually granted to, the carrier so that they can service and, repair the equipment.
And thank you. The generator is an emergency backup only?
It is, yes.
Okay. And, I'm looking at the drawings of the transmitters, receivers, whatever you call them, and what is,
The antennas on.
yeah, is the projection or the radius of these things going to exceed that of the lighting structure on the pole?
The antennas are designed so that they point out at different angles, and so that you can get the maximum. I mean, obviously, the coverage will go out over the school, but the lights will be exactly the same, so they wouldn't be shining on the residences or anything like that. They're there just for the baseball field.
And, does this involve, the structure involve guy wires, or is it just a monopole?
No, it's not tall enough to need guide wires.
Okay. And, would T-Mobile, share that lease agreement with the city?
Yeah, I'm sure they could, yeah.
We just have concerns about, interference with the school operations.
Okay.
And, where this, has the potential during the construction stage, in maintenance periods, these kinds of things, that
Right.
the school is okay with
Yeah,
what
yeah.
your needs are, but making sure their needs, of conducting school are not interfered with.
Yeah, the only stipulation that the school gave us was that they didn't want the light being taken down during baseball season. So anytime out of the baseball season, they were happy with the work, construction work going on.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That concludes my questions. Next I have Dan Diaz. Would you like to testify?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Your name, address, and get sworn in.
Yes, my name is Dan Diaz, 1220 Callan Court, Caldwell, Idaho. I've been sworn in. Yeah, basically, I see this as a security issue, to be honest with you. I used to compete with Verizon, and I changed over to T-Mobile with an unlimited data plan. And I did the research prior to that to make sure I had the coverage at my house. And according to the T-Mobile coverage map, I had fair coverage for the signal there. However, after switching, it came up to where I had zero coverage. Okay, I had absolutely zero coverage there from T-Mobile. I, at that point, complained to T-Mobile, and they sent me what's called a cell spot, which is a little micro-sized antenna that gives me cell reception through my Sparklight internet using my electricity to power it, of course. So if I lose power or my internet, I don't have a phone. And so being able to call emergency services as police, fire, ambulance, whatever, is non-existent if I lose internet or my electricity. So I have my mother-in-law who lives with us in the house. She's well in her 80s, and she has some health issues, and so it concerns me at times if the right conditions happen and I don't have cell coverage, that there's going to be an issue there. So having a reliable phone is what's needed for us there. And so that's my concern mostly. When we had the thunderstorms just this last week, my power fluctuated, and you lost my cell spot, literally like 2 weeks ago when we had that. And then it takes half an hour for the cell spot to reboot, to go through its process to reboot, okay? And so it's not a powers on to have a reception, but it takes a while to happen. And I also want my Sparklight internet to power that also, and so it's unreliable, basically, at this point. And so I feel this is a safety issue to have cell coverage for our area here. You know, needless to say, a whole other issue, which is something that affects me, but no one else, is just, you know, I'm paying for a unlimited package through T-Mobile, but I'm not able to use any of the data because all the data is going through my Sparklight connection, okay? And so I'm paying for unlimited when I don't even have any coverage whatsoever. So for me, if we could get it installed tomorrow, it would be fantastic as far as I'm concerned. But I know that's not possible. We have to go through this process to get this done. But I would appreciate your approval of this to try to make this as speedily as possible, because I don't really want to have future issues for trying to call police or fire or ambulance should those needs be in my neighborhood. So I appreciate your help with this.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
And next we have, is it Swan Kim?
I don't think I'm going to speak on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that concludes the public portion of the testimony. Would the applicant like to make a rebuttal?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
The applicant does not choose to make a rebuttal. With that, I will close the hearing and the testimony portion of that. I do have a concern just about the agreement between the city and the applicant. I'm not sure that the nature of that agreement is pretty a part of this hearing, but I want to make sure that anything that we do here protects the school district and anything that falls within the purview of the zoning code. And so to that end, with the findings of facts, the Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The proposed use is conditionally permitted by the terms of the ordinance and is subject to conditions of approval. And the conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case in order that it be approved or denied. Public notice requirements were met and the hearing was conducted within the guidelines of applicable Idaho code and city ordinances. For the order of decision, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby orders that case number SUP 2111, a request by Overage Development for special use permit to construct a telecommunications tower within the R1 low-density residential zone located at 1407 Homedale Road in Caldwell, Idaho, on the ground of the Valley View High School is approved with the following conditions of approval. And the conditions are A2 and A3. And with those conditions of approval, recommend approval of this case. And with that, I close the hearing on this case. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next one. I'm sorry, Will the assistant here, remind me that, we need to add a condition of approval that there is a payment for the permit made, or for the application, and, the payment will be necessary for this to, receive final approval. Make that, condition 8.4. Thank you very much. And next we have, action item concerning, VAR 2103, request by Kurt and Julie Bender for a variance for relief from the zoning ordinance accessory structure requirements, for structure placement. And, with that, I'd like the, staff to make their presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Katie Phillips, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn in. Tonight before you is a request for a variance. The subject property is zoned R1, low-density residential, as is the comprehensive plan designation. The property is located at 10164 Elvera Lane. And the request for the variance is to provide relief from City Code 100204 2C structure placement. 100204 2C requires that accessory buildings and structures exceeding area of 600 square feet are permitted in the rear yard with no portion of the building or structure built within the rear or side yard setback area. The applicant is proposing an accessory structure at approximately 3,520 square feet, and proposing that the placement of the accessory structure is in the side yard. And due to the location of the primary structure, placing the accessory use in the rear yard is not possible. So staff is supportive of this request to place the accessory structure in the side yard. And I will stand for questions.
Thank you. I do not have questions at this time. So with that, I would like to go to the applicant to make their presentation, please. State your name, address, and been sworn in.
Kurt Bender, 10164 Elvira Lane, Nampa, 83687, and I have been sworn in. I don't actually have a presentation. We submitted paperwork. I don't have anything that we've submitted as far as the layout.
It's in the staff report.
Oh.
The hearing examiner has a copy of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to add to that other than to thank you for considering our project, and thanks for the staff for the help in the application. As you can see by the odd shape of our property, the best location is in the very south west corner of the property for such a structure. So that's what we're asking to do.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. I just have one question. What is the use for that shed? Just normal?
For storage, we've got 2 RVs, a tractor and a backhoe, and we're also looking for inclement weather training area for our dogs. We compete with our dogs in canine agility, so right now we have to, in the winter, we have to drive all the way to Cuna to rent a property to train our dogs in, so.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
And, think the staff report clearly lays this out. I don't have any further questions or comments. It's a pretty straightforward application. There's one complicating factor, which is also addressed in the staff report, as much as the subdivision approval to the south had requested an easement for fire access through this property, and that happened to be one of the cases that I reviewed. The note in this application from the engineer said that there is at least the word, if not a finality, that access will not be executed. That's neither here nor there, but the one concern that does address this is that that's still essentially on the books, but the location of this proposed shed is outside of whatever easement might be required should that come to pass. So I just wanted to mention that in the record and make sure that the siding of this structure would allow for that if that indeed is still an issue. In fact, staff, could you help me out with that? Is that still a requirement in pursuant to the subdivision and subdivision approval for the property to the south?
Yes, that fire access will have to exist. What the engineering staff was concerned about was that the original proposed location of the structure was encroaching on what he believed that easement was and where some services were to be located. And so they relocated the structure, moved the structure closer to the west property boundary to get it outside of the easements that the city engineering staff was concerned about.
Thank you, Ms. Root. We have no further persons testify signed up here. Sir, would you like to make a rebuttal to any of that?
No.
Thank you very much. With that, I will close the public hearing and move to the variance criteria. This is a pretty straightforward application. The variance criteria must be addressed. I'll quickly go through here. The variance criteria, there are 5 of them that must be met in order to grant a variance from the ordinance. And I will just refer to page 3 of 14, section 7 of the variance criteria, and to say that I concur with the conclusions of the staff on this, that it does meet the criteria for the variance. I would like to add to item 1 the following sentence: the lot configuration and size allow this variance request. The lot size and configuration substantiates this variance request. Rephrase that. And with that, the application does meet the sections of the code under 10-0305-4A.1-5 zoning ordinance to substantiate that the criteria for a variance have been met. And the findings of fact before us, the Caldwell hearings examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The proposed use is conditionally permitted by the terms of the ordinance and is subject to conditions of approval. findings of the various criteria, just discussed. The hearing examiner finds section 10-0305, items 1 through 5 to all be true and allowing for the variance to be granted. The conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearings examiner has the authority to hear this case in order that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, and the hearing was conducted within the guidelines of applicable Idaho code and city ordinances. The order of decision, based on the findings and facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby orders that case number VAR-2003, request by Kurt and Julie Bender for a variance to provide relief from the zoning ordinance structure placement to construct an accessory structure that is greater than 600 square feet in the side yard in the R1 low density zone located at 10164 Elvera Lane in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the following conditions. And there are conditions 10.2, 10.3, and I'm going to add a condition. The building siding should comply with the planning and zoning and engineers approval in regards to a fire easement to access the property to the south. With that, I close the hearing. Oh,
Just to clarify, you're talking about the building location?
The building location, yes, I'm sorry. And, just want to make sure that it's outside of the easement for fire access. Well, I think I need, I think I need a break, drink of water. But yes, no, the building siding. And with that, I conclude the hearing, and thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Moving on. Last but not least, we have action item, case number ANN 219, a request by Valley View School District number 139 to annex approximately 64 acres, including parcels R32717 and R32718. The subject properties containing Valley View Middle School and proposed new elementary site are to be zoned R1 low density residential. The subject property is located at 1641 South 10th Avenue, Caldwell, Idaho. And with that, I request the staff to make their presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Deb Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and the Hampton Sworn. As indicated in this opening, Valley View School District is requesting to annex 2 parcels, one containing the existing Valley View Middle School and an additional parcel east of that for a proposed elementary school. The subject properties are contiguous to city property, and they currently have recently been provided with services and through a municipal services agreement, which also required annexation when they were contiguous. Valley View School District has purchased property that then made the middle school property contiguous. The requested zoning for the annexation is R1 low density residential, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The current comprehensive plan designation for the middle school is public, but there is no zoning code that is public in the zoning ordinance, and therefore R1 is consistent with what the zones for the other schools in the city of Caldwell are zoned as well. So staff is in agreement with the requested zoning of R1 for the approximate 64 acres as conditioned, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. The linkage here is through that little, looks like a strip proposed for access into that site. There's just that little piece of contiguency there along Montana.
Yeah, it's adjacent to, so the Seventh Day Adventist property is and this elementary school property was purchased from Seventh Day Adventist group. They had annexed and zoned a portion of their property, including a strip of support housing into the city of Caldwell. That blue hashed area that shows on page 1 of the staff report is highway corridor zoning. And so there is the entire east boundary of the school property is contiguous to city limits.
Okay. But the annexation does not include that little strip that's already.
It does not, it was already, yes, the ingress egress piece for the proposed road access to the elementary school.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just one question. This was a request, a voluntary annexation from the school district? Or did the city request that they annex?
So the school district was going to annex this property. They were required to put in some municipal services to the school to support some further development on the middle school property, which requires annexation when they're contiguous. So upon purchase of the elementary school property, they become contiguous to city limits, and they need the municipal services for this elementary school development.
Thank you very much. That's all the question I had. The staff report is quite thorough in addressing the issues around this. With that, I would like to request the applicant come up and make your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
My name is Kristen McNeil. I'm with the Land Group at 462 East Shore Drive in Eagle, Idaho. And I'm here representing Valley View School District. And I was sworn in.
Okay.
And thank you, Deb, for the great presentation. I have some slides, but she covered everything, so I'm just going to skip the last slide unless any questions come up that involve the others. We are in agreement with the staff report and the conditions of approval. So thank you very much, and I stand for any questions.
Well, thank you very much for that brief testimony. And you've got at least a sighting of a footprint for the elementary proposed school there. How far along is that design? Is that footprint cast in stone right now, or is you proceeding ahead with the design phase?
It's in just a conceptual site plan at this point, and there are no applications have been made to the city regarding that development, and the timeline isn't set at this point. A lot of that will be determined by demand, which all the development going on in the area, that could accelerate that timeline. But at this point, there is not a specific timeline set for development. So it's a conceptual site plan at this time.
Okay. Does the school district have a number, like number of classrooms, square footage, area of the building, just trying to get a scope on the size of the structure that they're hoping to build.
I do not have that information at this time.
And the follow-up is, this property is adequate to locate that type of facility, and, will any of this, go to the junior high, the middle school? Or is it all, these discrete parcels reflect the elementary parcel, by itself?
I'm sorry, can you explain that question a little further?
Well, is there going to be an expansion of the middle school into this parcel?
Oh, I understand. No, I think as the site plan shows, there's a little section that goes up, if you look at the line between the elementary parcel and the middle school parcel, there is a proposed driveway that goes up into that area, which would, I think it might become a service drive potentially for the middle school, but not, I don't even know if it would be paved. But that's all a conceptual site plan. And that driveway is really to service the buses that will go on that side. And to bring this up also, that little stub, at this time, that whole area, the stub that's going out to Montana, that's all anticipated future right-of-way dedication, which would go along with the development application.
Okay. And, well, that's all the questions I have. This is pretty straightforward. I appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I do have a question for staff. Mr. McDonald, is there, speaking of the driveway here, does the city have a concern about that interior circulation? That'll just be addressed when their building design comes in?
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner, without having a building, site layout, there's no way to address any of the internal circulation. Typically for school sites, the city, the engineering department does not have a lot of input regarding internal circulation. That would be probably more of the fire department. The one thing that the engineering department does care about is we want to make sure that there's not queuing backing out into the major roadways like 10th Avenue. And so at this point, I don't have any comment on any of that until they provide something for the city to look at regarding a development.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And Ms. Rue, will this application include a development agreement?
Yes, it would include a development agreement, with the annexation and zoning and the, required right-of-way dedications and such that are included in the engineering letter.
Okay. Get that for the record. And your staff report didn't show any concerns with this application and meeting the comprehensive plan and then the zoning code. We're all good with that?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, with that, I will, would you like to rebut any of this?
No, thank you.
Okay, no rebuttal requested. With that, I'll close the hearing and get to the conclusions and findings. The findings of fact for ANN 21-9, Valley View School District number 139, are as follows for the annexation. The Caldwell Hearing Examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law for the annexation. The Caldwell Hearing Examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. With that, the recommendation for the annexation and zone change is as follows. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell Hearing Examiner hereby recommends the mayor and city council the case number ANN
Please check the
21.
external devices and cable connection status. 2, press the
Thank you. The Caldwell Hearing Examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number ANN 21-9, a request by Valley View School District number 139 to annex parcels R32717 and R32718, 64 acres more or less within R1 low-density residential zone designation for the property located at 16412 South 10th Avenue and the adjacent parcel to the east in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the conditions of approval, and is recommended to the mayor and council. The conditions of approval is shown on page 6 of 15 in the staff report, include conditions 10.2 through 10.7, and with those conditions of approval and recommendation, City Council, we close this hearing, and thank you very much for your participation. And close the hearing. Meeting is adjourned. Two, yeah.
I think he did that right before, between my hearings.
We did it in the house.
Yeah, he apologized if anyone could kill the audience for that.
Thank you.
Okay, 2 hours, 2 later. So I'm the last one, I'm the last man standing, do I get a prize? Yes.
Oh, one more
Yes,
thing.
he did, here.